Morning mist glides over Snowdon, over the mountains where the men of Wales for centuries fought their enemy, the English, over the castles, over Harlech and Conway and Carnarvon, garrisoned by English kings in the long and far away wild wars. Morning mist over the Vale of Llangollen and over the oldest rocks in the world, the ageless, world-backed, morning-waking mountains. And the mist moves too, but yellower and greyer now, over cold, bare hillbacks and violent grassless peaks, from green to black mountain, from green to grey Wales. Morning is breaking over Wales at war. Not the long and far away wild war of the mountain Welshmen and the English kings, but the terrible near war of England and Wales and her brothers and sisters all over the earth against the men who would murder man. In the furnaces of Llanelli, in the roaring cauldrons of the Swansea Valley, in the stamp and clatter and glare of the black and red works, where the fires never go out, they fight with blinding, blazing rods and piston rams. They fight to the rhythm of iron forests, thrusting between flames. They fight with the white-hot muscles and arms of steel. In the docks of the south, they fight with ropes and cranes and hoists. They load the ships to slide into the mined and death-sprung waters, and all the quays are alive, loud with war. In the Rhondda Valley, they fight with pick and shovel and drill. They fight the cruel, obstinate, dark rock middles of the mountains for minerals and metals. They go down into the splintered darknesses of the mines, into the blind, propped underworld with horses and canaries. They go down like ghosts in black, only their smiles are white. Wales is a mountain of strength. And in the north, the farmer drives his sheep over the wind-blown heights. This greener Wales is a strong mountain too. The shepherds whistle to their collies, and the dogs back the sheep home. A bleating world of wool moves high above the sea and river, over the valleys puffed and threaded with trains that rumble into towns, trains that take the mountain fleeces into the distant mills. It is not only the miner and the farmer, the steel worker and the shepherd who fight for peace among their mountains. In Aberystwyth, at the University Department of Agriculture, Professor Stapleton has succeeded in breeding new and more luscious kinds of grass. Out of years of experiment, new plants have come to being. Life has grown out of science, and from the laboratories and the research stations, green, fresh meadows stretch away into the unpredictable distance. Many of the hillsides of Wales have been sown with these grasses now, and more sheep can live upon every acre. High up, the sheep graze upon miraculous grass. A new strength has been given to the mountains. But below, in Llanberis, at the foot of Snowdon, men still work the stones for an ancient richness, scaling and hacking those steep hillsides, those high-hewn walls that have known for hundreds of old years the rope ladder and the nailed boot, the pick and the grappling iron of the Welsh slate quarrymen. Now on the roofs of buildings in London and Paris and New York, the slates of Llanberis quarries lie under strange skies. The new grass and the old stone in the mountains of contrast. The new war, the old singing in the mountain villages. In the squat grey chapel at the grey butt end of the street, Bethesda, Smyrna, Capel Horeb, Capel Sion, with a hand-blown organ, or an old harmonium with a wheeze and a cough, or in the tall, stern chapel built in the 70s or the 80s as a rock of respectability in the strange, new industrial life that went on at the foot of the mountain, the tall, stern father and mother of the mountain, grey and bare over the blackened chapel roof. But the singing in the chapels is never grim or grey. The voices of colliers or shepherds, quarrymen or small farmers, tradesmen from the scorched valleys, or ploughmen from the long fields, the voices of children brought up to play Indians on the slag heaps, or pirates in the cattle-voiced meadows, are sweet and powerful, wild and gentle as the weather over the mountains, or the wind-like movements of light and shadow through the high, chill streets. Here in the chapels of Wales, Bethesda, Smyrna, Horeb and Sion, the young and the old come to sing and worship. To listen to the poetry and oratory of the preacher, they will come down miles of mountains or climb up from the sooted valley towns. They come to talk at the chapel doors when the service is over, or in the churchyards where the stone angels stand cold in front of sun and factory smoke. They come to talk among the poorer gravestones with their gifts of valley-soured flowers, or their remembrances of wild flowers from high in the unspoiled fields. On weekdays, the women meet in the chapel hall, the mothers and the grandmothers, the whist drive and the jumble sale committees. There are concerts and Astervodai. The young people dance, and the old, remembering, watch them. Here the bards and the minstrels meet, as they met in the Middle Ages, though the lovely valleys in the south where they played on harps and sang are barnacled with smoking chimneys and crusted with bad streets. The finding of coal, copper, iron ore, and anthracite brought power and wealth to the valleys that had needed nothing but the peace of their fields and the honor of the labor of their own hands. The valleys grew rich, houses spread over the hills, smoke and dirt blew over the unrecognizable meadows, the fields of brick and steel. The valleys grew rich, but all the time the power and wealth of the world were rocking. Then the days when the pits stopped, the factories closed their gates, the furnaces died out, and the great sheets of smoke that had floated over industrial Wales came down like blinds over the blind windows of the mean streets, came draping down over the houses without hope, over the locked shop and the leaking roof. At the corners lolled the old young men, or they walked their thin whippets over the dirty grass, or they scrabbled on the tips for fish trails of coal. Remember the procession of the old young men, from Dole Queue to corner and back again, from the pinched, packed street to the peak of slag in the bite of the winter with a shovel and bag, with a drooping fag and turned-up collar, stamping for the cold at the ill-lit corner, dragging through the squalor with their hearts like lead, staring at the hunger and the shut pithead, nothing in their pockets, nothing home to eat, lagging from the slag heap